We're not wired to want to forgive somebody who's done something so bad. Who wants to wake up in the morning? Oh, I want to forgive them. No. But we are wired for freedom. And with that freedom, all sorts of creativity comes out.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. My name is Dustin P., creative coach and consultant. I'm so grateful to be with you again as we're continuing through this series, The Psychology of Creativity. This week, I was fortunate enough to have an incredible guest for you today. His name is Mark Goodman. Mark runs an organization called 70 times 7, in which he preaches the power of forgiveness. He has his own radical story, which you're going to hear a little bit of in the interview. He's an author, and he has an opportunity coming up for a major motion picture about his story as well. You'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks and months. But I had an amazing time talking to Mark. So genuine, and it honestly was just full transparency. It was a word for me that I needed to hear as a creative person, but even more so just as a human being. And so I hope that you'll take the time over the next 30 minutes to take some notes and listen to it again. Trust me, this is a powerful interview with my new good friend, Mark Goodman. Check it out. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you here.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you, Dustin. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, as you may have heard already in my intro, Mark is a bit of a new friend of mine, but I already can feel like we're kindred spirits from many, many years ago. And as you're going to learn today, Mark is an extraordinary human, and he's got lots of great things to share with us, specifically on this topic of forgiveness. And I asked Mark to come on here as we're in the Mental Health Awareness Month, nationally speaking, and we're in this series, The Psychology of Creativity. I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I do find it fascinating to see how some of these external circumstances can affect our creative endeavors. And so I've asked Mark to come on here today and just kind of talk a little bit about that. And so before we get into it, Mark, I would love for you to just share a brief synopsis of your story. I know you have a crazy, unique, and really cool forgiveness story. If you just could kind of share a summary of that with us.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. You'll understand why I feel so passionate about the subject of forgiveness. And we all carry around our own backpack of pain, shame, blame, things that happen to us. I mean, Dustin, let's face it, we don't get to be an adult. I mean, we don't get out of childhood without emotional wounds, some of them bad, some of them really, really bad. So the brief version of this is, as a teenager, I lived homeless in the streets of and beaches of LA, literally eating out of dumpsters and soup lines. Now, as bad as that sound, I have great memories of it because it was a step up. It was better, safer than what I had growing up in Detroit. Now, have you ever been to Detroit at all?
I have not been to Detroit.
Oh, you're lucky. I wish I could say the same. Back,
Yeah,
especially
I've
back in
heard.
the 70s, it's
I've heard.
basically like it's like in Newark without the glitter. There's nothing,
Wow.
and it was a very dangerous place. And so, at least on the outside, there was the danger that you knew about. For me, it was the danger inside of the walls. From a mother and father with alcoholic, but mainly it was my father. And my father was abusive. He grew up in an abusive as a child, and he went off to war to escape that, and in World War II to fight in Okinawa, the bloodiest battle. Met my mom on leave, and 10 days later they were married. I mean, talk about ill-equipped to be a father and a husband and to be a good person. So, yes, alcohol is how, and anger is how he dealt with it. But when I say abusive, I had three older brothers. Used to beat them till they were virtually unconscious. My oldest brother threw him out the front picture window. And it wasn't just father and son, it was brother to brother. My bedroom door used to have bumper stickers on the outside, not for decorations, but to hide the holes in it from at
Hmm.
different times where family members had come at me with a bat or a knife. And so it was a dangerous place, but it
Hmm.
didn't stop there. My dad sexually abused his own boys.
Hmm.
So, as one can imagine, the damage that is caused by being sexually abused as a child is one thing, but by your own father, we're talking about levels of wounds that are, um, for a lot of people, are just tough to comprehend. And so, although your listeners have different wounds, it's different, maybe not as bad. I meet a lot of people who are worse than this. I wouldn't trade my story at all for them. It still hurts, and carrying around that anger, that resentment, need for payback, shame can cause a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So, my three older brothers, the oldest one passed away a few years ago, full of anger and resentment. Do you know what happened to me? I am a victim. I got every right to be angry and do harm to other people.
Sure.
My next oldest brother lives in a special apartment in Florida, no friends. He has his walls of protection around him and nothing but his imaginary friends. He's schizophrenic and can't sleep at night because of the nightmares, mostly at age 12, when the worst of the things that were happening to him from our dad. And
Hmm.
then my middle brother, who taught me business and led me to the Lord, called me, and while on the phone call, took his own life.
Hmm.
Now, on his death certificate, it says died of suicide, but I think you realize, and I know I do, it should say he died of unforgiveness.
Yeah.
And here I am, Dustin, one of the happiest, most grateful people you're ever going to meet.
Yeah, it's true.
Explain that, other than the amazing power of God and the freedom found in forgiveness. I don't have to carry this around another single day.
Yeah, I love what you said there about how your story, while it is unique to you in your life, that many people go through traumatic experiences early on in life, some worse than yours, some not quite as bad. But I feel like as I work with a lot of creative people that their ability to forgive and the mental clarity. You're a creative person yourself, as
Yes, sir.
we may come up it may come up in our conversation today about your book and the film and all sorts of cool things. But so you know what it's like to kind of put yourself out there and to be vulnerable. If you could you speak for a moment on what the impact of forgiveness has on the mental well-being of a person as they enter into their creative process?
Absolutely. Look, is it really comes about freedom, right? What happened? You're right. It may come from the child. It may come later. A loved one cheated on you. A boss fired you for no good reason. A business partner ripped you off. There's all sorts of reasons, legitimate reasons. I get it. You got every right to be angry, but it's really all about freedom. And as we know, creativity is so much is about freedom. Now,
Hmm.
we all love, I love in one of your other podcasts, you said is about creatives still love a box, right? We still need to know where that box is. But within
Yeah.
that box, we love that freedom to creative. And it's about listening and understanding and feeling. So what happened to you is real. They really hurt you. And I don't know who did it, when it happened, how long ago. But if you think about it, just think about it: if a dog bit a big bite out of your arm,
Huh.
and each time we're hurt by somebody, we hurt another, it causes a wound. But if that wound is left open, left unhealed, it'll cause new problems, including infections. I mean, you can blame the dog for the bite, but Dustin, I got bad news for you. You can't blame the dog for the infection. That's on you.
Mhm.
Does that make
Mm.
sense? And the
That's
wound of unforgiveness will cause new infections and problems. The wound of unforgiveness will affect and infect all areas of your life. And often it shows up in those that you're closest to pay the most: friends, family, co-workers that you're trying to be creative work on.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's great.
Good.
It leads me to one of my next questions here of
Please.
why why would someone, especially someone in your shoes, but anyone who has certain levels or certain degrees of unforgiveness in their life, certain trauma or drama in their past, why would anyone even think of forgiving someone who, in your case, clearly may not even deserve forgiveness? Like, how do we reconcile that in our own human minds?
Oh, I love that question. Um, do you forgive them because they deserve it? No, they don't deserve it, but you do. And that's the difference. By definition, forgiveness is a conscious, it's a deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or a group who's harmed you because of what they did or didn't do. You ready for this? Regardless of whether or not they actually deserve it.
Hmm.
So maybe they don't deserve to be forgiven, but you deserve it. And with that becomes the freedom from the resentment of the vengeance. Forgiveness equals freedom. In our nonprofit, what I offer, the carrot, is not, we're not wired to want to forgive somebody who's done something so bad. Who wants to wake up in the morning? Oh, I want to forgive them. No. But we are wired for freedom. And with that freedom, all sorts of creativity comes out.
Man, wired for freedom. That is powerful stuff right there. I want to take a shift for a second, Mark.
Sure.
I think a lot of creatives, and maybe not so much in your story, but I'm willing to bet in some of the stories that you've had to interact and maybe even counsel through some situations. A lot of creatives struggle with internal forgiveness of themselves.
Mhm.
How does forgiving oneself for certain mistakes or failures, how does that contribute to your creativity? How does that contribute to the impact that you can make through your creative journey?
Sure. So first of all, forgiving yourself is always it's the toughest. There are four: forgiving somebody else, asking for forgiveness, self forgiveness, and forgiving your higher power. And it sounds crazy, but anybody who's lost a child knows how to be angry at God.
Sure.
Forgiving yourself, I like to call it self reconciliation, because if I've got a forgiveness bucket and a reconciliation bucket, it falls into here. See, forgiveness only takes one side of a two-sided transaction. It's not it's not subject to an apology, it's not subject to anything from the other side. I can forgive regardless of anything from them. In fact, what I promote is forgiveness subject to nothing from them, absolutely nothing. Reconciliation takes both sides. Back to the self forgiveness. It's really reconciliation. You're the offender and the offended. Hey, Mark, I'm really sorry for what I did. Oh, man, you really messed me up. Right.
Yeah.
And when we're not reconciled with each other, with ourselves, it shows up in all sorts of other awful ways. And so, the less creative we could be with that freedom that, in removing the shame, often in self forgiveness, it comes with shame.
Mm.
Right? I can't believe I did. I'm still holding on to what I did last summer, last week, last night. Bad me, bad me, bad me. And you know what, Dustin? You know what shame needs? Three things. If you get rid of these three things, shame cannot exist. One, silence. Keep it in the dark. Right? I'm not going to tell anybody. Not
Yeah.
that you got to go out like me and write a book about it and make a film about it. I'm not saying that. Okay.
Yeah.
But find somebody you can trust. And look, I want to tell you what I did last month, last summer, last whatever it is. And I'm working on this. Can I talk this out? Second is judgment. I'm judging myself as being wrong. And third is unforgiveness. You keep it, get it out of the dark. You remove the judgment and you forgive it. Shame cannot exist.
Wow. That's so powerful. I was just getting ready to ask you, like, okay, well, how do we get rid of this, kind of self condemnation, unforgiveness? But that's really the three keys. And you and I know, Mark, as believers, that all three of those things are found in Scripture, right? That there is no condemnation found in Jesus, and all these things that we read constantly throughout Scripture, we know to be true. I would love to know from you, Mark. Is there a connection between an individual's ability to forgive and their resilience in the face of challenges or setbacks, specifically creative challenges or setbacks?
Sure. A lot of it has comes with, especially in the self forgiveness, right? I'm
Yeah.
still holding on to that. One of the byproducts of that is self-worth, worthlessness, right?
Hmm.
Um, in relationships. And when you're feeling unworthy, um, I'm going to use myself as an example. With my wounds, I had every right to be resentful, right?
Yep.
I did. However, that my self worth took a beating, not just with what happened, but with my thoughts and my actions moving forward. As creatives, you can relate to this. Instead of driving, looking forward and checking the rearview mirror every once in a while, I just drove staring at the rearview mirror the whole time, bumping
Wow.
into things. Right? The movie. Quit using that rewind. Start looking forward. So with each defeat or failure, I allowed it to feed my worthlessness. It would take the wind out of my sail. And if you can relate to that, you can relate to this. It was hard to beef up my creativity to where it needed to be. And likewise, I was easily pulled away from the creativity with every setback. The freedom found in forgiveness boosted my self worth tremendously. And in turn, put me in a place of quickly jumping into creative mode and staying there.
Wow. Yeah, which is clearly evident, right? I mean, you've gone on to write a book, you're working on this feature film. Let's just take a pause in the interview for a second. Can you just tell us about the book? What kind of brought that on? How did you go about getting into that? Since it is a creative endeavor, I know a lot of people that listen to this are writers. What made you decide to write this book and kind of put this story out there, right? You talked about sharing that story, kind of confession being a major part of getting rid of that, or getting rid of any unforgiveness in your life. So how did that all come to be for you?
Look, with my story, you can imagine there's a lot of shame. For a good portion of my life, I was in the corporate world. And not only did I go to college, but I'm not telling them I used to live homeless in the streets, right?
Yeah.
No, uh, I've traveled all over the world. In the UAE, I got invited to the palace as a guest of His Highness and His Excellency. So I can say I've dined with kings and I've dined out of dumpsters and everything in between,
Hmm.
but I still wore that mask. If you knew the real me, you wouldn't like me.
Yeah.
And so back in 2015, somebody that I met gave told the whole thing, and I was blown away. And I said, "I'm tired of keeping it quiet." Finally, spoke up and shared my story, and I shared it big. An auditorium in one of the largest churches in the United States, North Point Community Church, and shared my story on the screen. That mask came off, and it
Mhm.
felt great.
Yeah.
So, wanted to get the message out more. And so for the next, I started a nonprofit called 70 times 7, 70 times 7, somewhere back
Mhm.
here. I can't get the right direction,
Yep.
.org. For the last 7 years, been helping people one-on-one forgiveness coaching, never charged for it, holding their hand and walking through their freedom where they can be free from that anger and the resentment. So last year, I finally said enough is enough and took the time to finally start telling the story, the forgiveness journey. Now, I didn't have a 70 times 7 to help me out, right? So this book is about this really tough, really unusual journey to find the path to freedom.
Hmm.
So if anybody wants to learn how to forgive the unforgivable, I'm telling you, this book is for you.
Yeah.
So now we're getting the message out, and announcements coming out. Let's just say it. There's very little I can talk about, but let's just say there's a good chance that this may be turned into a feature film.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible that I think what we've seen in your story so far, specifically you as someone who has taken so much brokenness and so much trauma and the complete right to not forgive, right? You have the
Absolutely.
complete right to live in this unforgiveness. Instead, you made a conscious choice. And I talk a lot about that on this podcast, that when these daily choices that we make are what can determine our future to a certain extent. It's what a lot of people talk about now as mindset, right? And you've taken the mindset and you've taken the choice and the decision of forgiveness. And because of it, you're beginning to see the freedom, which we talked about earlier in this interview.
Mhm.
You're seeing the freedom that comes with it, and and the freedom that came with it is not only just personal relief. I can only imagine the personal
Yeah.
relief you must walk around in.
Oh, my
Uh,
shoulders are light now.
yeah, but it's also, you know, kind of transitioning into itself in the in this amazing book and an opportunity to share your story. It's transitioning itself into this feature film and an opportunity to share your story with even more, encourage other people even more. And so what I want creatives to hear in this interview with you, Mark, and what I'm hearing and what I'm learning from you right now in this interview is that forgiveness is a brick, or unforgiveness is a brick wall that will 100% hinder you from being able to accomplish your creative hopes and wishes and you know endeavors in front of you. But if you can make that conscious choice to forgive for yourself, then kind of the opportunities are limitless, right? Because you've freed that clutter from your mind. Is what I'm saying what you're saying too?
Absolutely. And do you ever working with somebody next to you and they're full of bitterness?
Hmm.
How enjoyable and how much creativity, how much interaction do you want to have going on with them? Are you that person? And when I meet with people, one of the first things I accept and acknowledge that what happened to you, you know what? You got every right to be pissed off and angry. And if anybody's got a problem with that, you have them come see me. I will defend you for being pissed off and angry. You got every right to.
Yeah.
But how's that working out for you? Your shoulders getting tired? You had carried enough? Would you
Yeah.
like would you like to be different? And so now to turn that and turn this pain into creative. So that's what we're doing now. This one-on-one is we're in the process in a very, very creative way through social media, through documentary, film, podcasts, speaking, and then ultimately as a digital platform, a community platform to provide help, is to scale this uh, into the hundreds of thousands and millions of people worldwide.
Yeah.
So, like an example on the social media, we're at 57,000 followers now, gaining a new follower every 90 seconds right now. But we're on path to have over 1 million followers by the end of the year. And before the movie were to come out, in the millions of followers. So we can share this message in a creative way that the audience can connect to. Even though your story is different from mine, you weren't
Yeah.
sexually abused, but I can still creatively connect that pain. I know that pain, Mark, is different, but I know that it feels like, and I'm tired. I am sick and tired of carrying that around, and I want to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so many creatives tend to hold on to their pain as their quote unquote muse or their inspiration. But imagine the creativity that could come out of if you were to able just let go of that, and the freedom that you would experience. I love what you said at the beginning that you know creativity just desires freedom. So many
Mhm.
creatives that I work with are just all their everything they're doing is so that they can have more freedom and have more autonomy. Well, I think this is the path to get that for sure. I want to ask you one more very practical question before I give you an opportunity to tell us about where we can learn more about what you have going on. Are there any specific practices or exercises that you promote to help people practice forgiveness and thus enhance their creativity and their creative thinking in our instance? But just what are some practical steps of people going, you know, I want to forgive, but I'm having a hard time doing it.
Sure. I think of it almost like, look, I'm an old guy, and I've got to eat well, and I have to go to the gym to maintain, right? To do well.
Yeah.
And so I'm working those muscles. If I didn't work them at all, everything feels tough. And so it's working your forgiveness muscle in the little things so you can be strong on the big ones. Now, remember, forgiveness won't change your past, but it sure will change your future. So
Hmm.
for everyday exercises, I really have two of them. One is just this constant attitude of let go, let go. A great example: you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off, right? I instantly judge them doing wrong. They're long gone out of my life. I show up at work angry and resentful and take it out on the people around me, and I start my day off in a bad way.
Hmm.
Right? Instead, just let it go. I have no idea what's going on in their life. Maybe they're whatever issues they got going on. Second
Yeah.
is realize how many times a day we're judgmental. Now, judgment leads to anger and resentment. And if you don't believe me, just go next party you go to, bring up politics and religion. Okay. See how the judgment level goes up and the anger goes up right behind it. So I have a thing on a daily basis is I find myself judging other people, other things. I call it the red flag program, or just raising my hand, right? And I can't believe he did that. Can't believe she forgot to send me that.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, and you'd be amazed how many by the end of the day how your shoulders are tired. So
Hmm.
back up, just let it go and work on judgment detox, because you'd be surprised how many times a day your coworkers and how it infringes on your ability to be creative, joy, and free.
Man, that is so, so good. I know I needed to hear that today. Mark, before I let you go today, I just want to let everybody know, obviously, what can they find if they go to 70 times 7.org? I'm sure all your socials are on there, but what kind of resources are at their disposal?
Yeah, there are actually practical tips of how do I process more of the process. How do I forgive?
Yeah.
So there's more practical information there. There's also a way to get a hold of us if you're looking for more information. Subscribe, because we're constantly sending out information.
Yeah.
Come roughly October and November, we'll have a full digital platform put together by clinical psychologists, theologians, and experienced people. Because I wish I could write a book. Here are the 6 steps to forgiveness. And you know what? It'd be a bunch of baloney.
Hmm.
Your path and their path and his path are all different. And
Wow.
there's actually a science of forgiveness. There are hundreds and hundreds of studies, and I'm not going to take up the time now to show the why. But once we understand about you through an assessment, we can send you, you're going to go on path 12, you're going to go on path 7, 14, as though I'm sitting there with you to hold your hand and walk you down that path of forgiveness. So we can scale this to help hundreds of thousands, millions of people on this journey to make a forgiveness movement. So high level overview, you can see a link to get the book. Again, if you're trying to forgive the unforgivable, I'm not trying to push books. I'm trying to push forgiveness. It happens
Yeah.
to be through a book. I could care less about how many books honestly, it's all going to the nonprofit anyways. It's not like I'm making money off of it.
Yeah.
So
That's
anyways,
incredible.
those two would be the best sources to go to, and then keep your
That's-
eyes open. Maybe the next 18 to 24 months of something else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be big, man. I love the message that you're devoting your life to spreading is a worthy one. So the book "Forgiving a Good Man: An Abuse Survivor's Journey of Freedom Through Forgiveness." You can find that at Amazon. I highly encourage. Mark Goodman, thank you so much for spending just a few minutes of your time with us today. It's been so, so helpful, so encouraging. I cannot wait to see what happens next with 70 times 7 and Forgiving a Good Man. It's going to be an incredible journey, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you very much.